Hi, it's Dawn from Dawn's Dirt. Dirt can mean gardening, dirt can mean soil, dirt can mean animals, chickens, pigs, cows, dirt can mean politics, dirt can mean religion, dirt can mean anything we want it to mean. We're just here to talk dirt. And so, super excited for today's episode. I have my girl Carley on here, and I just have to say that without Carley, we would not have a podcast. So, Carley helps me edit and get it out on the internet. And surprise, I don't do well with technology. And so, yeah, if you like my shows, it's because of Carley. It's sure not because of me. She is the queen behind the scenes doing all of the work. And I could not do this without her. Super excited to have you on the show today and the episode. And welcome here, Carley. I cannot sing your praises enough.
Oh, thank you for that intro, Dawn. That's great. It's an honor to be here. I've watched your show grow from just being an idea to now being a full-fledged podcast with a full audience of homesteaders and farmers and want to be homesteaders. And I've loved watching your growth from being a farmer to now being someone who coaches people who want to do that. So it's truly an amazing thing to be a part of.
I love it. I love it. And you are actually a podcast host as well. And so, yeah, we've got two hosts on the show today, which is pretty cool. And so,
Yeah.
but I think you're here today to put me on the hot seat. You're here with, I think you've got some questions. I don't even know what your questions are. So this could be interesting. And you're here today to ask me the questions on my show. So yeah, let's dig into that. I might be scared.
All right. Yes, Don, I'm here to make you sweat and answer the questions that maybe some people aren't willing to really do.
Uh-oh.
All right. So, Don, I'm super curious. This comes up for me a lot. I'm going to just dive right into my first question here because I am so curious about this, and hopefully you can give some kind of an answer. But so I want to talk organics. I'm so curious. Is organic farming always better, or is the label just a marketing ploy? I gotta know.
My truthful answer, and it can be different person to person to person. So you're going to get my answer today. My answer today is I think it's a bit of both. I think there is a bit of a marketing ploy and, a bit of fear around food and around, what we're eating. And so I think there is a bit of a marketing ploy with it because you can get higher prices for it. So the margins are sometimes a bit better for it. But at the same time, I don't know. Like, I think that good, wholesome, meat, potatoes, and vegetables like I grew up on that wasn't necessarily organic. That's good too. And so the organic certification is really a big deal here in Canada. Certain things are allowed to be organic, certain things are not. In the States, they have their own certifying process. And then when you get outside of Canada in the United States, like who's paying off who to get that, sticker on the apple or whatever it is. I heard of someone who was in a warehouse one time and the apples were going through and they're putting the stickers on and just like that, the label switched from regular apples, conventional apples to organic apples, just like that. And you just gotta wonder what's going on. And when I had my farm too, I always told my customers, I said, in my opinion, local from Canada in the wintertime that may have pesticide use as the last resort is going to be a better decision or a better, healthier choice than organic from Mexico that sat in a warehouse, sat in a truck, sat in that spinach or whatever you're getting from down south is 2 or 3 weeks old. Well, the nutritional value on that organic, whatever item it is going to be less than the nutritional value on the local cucumber, tomato, and pepper that you got from your local greenhouse that may have had something as a very last resort if the farmer is going to lose his crop. I trust those farmers. I know those farmers. I think we've kind of made ourselves afraid of our food.
Yeah, like that's so interesting because there is this fear around getting only organic. Like I know that there are people out there who will not eat anything that is not organic. And I wonder where that comes from. Like, is it fear? Is it something where we are not trusting our own food sources? And so you get organic, but what are you sacrificing if it is from Mexico or if it is from halfway across the world and it's been sitting on multiple ships and then warehouses and trucks and then it's in the grocery store? Like, is that better?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I do think it comes down to fear, and it comes down to indoctrination as well. I really think that the WEF and like it's interesting actually because we wear somewhat tinfoil hats, right? We question everything, and it's just questioning. It's not even a tinfoil hat. It's just we just question, and I think that this whole push for organics and the not using Roundup and not using all these things, I think it's actually coming from the WEF and some of those United Nations and some of those left-wing ideologies actually um that are centered around climate change. And so again, it depends on what your belief system is. If you believe in climate change, then yeah, it could be a problem. But if you don't, then like you know I just there's just so many layers to our food system, and I just truly feel that if you're making better choices. So I've got some chickens I'm raising right now, meat birds. And I had someone ask me yesterday, well, are they going to be organic? And I said, nope, it's my job to tell you the truth. It's your job to make informed decisions. And I'm just going to use the regular grain. I'm going to start them off with the medicated feed because I chose the medicated feed as opposed to vaccinating the chicks. I didn't vaccinate the chicks. I chose the medicated feed instead. It's just a week or two right in the beginning. It'll be out of their systems by the time they go to butcher. No big deal. And then I'm feeding them just regular chick starter and then chick grower or like layer ration because the conversion of feed to meat ratio is going to be higher. Like my costs are going to be lower, so I can lower the price of those chickens a little bit, and we the people, the customer and myself, we can it's a win-win situation. Whereas with organics, sometimes the rate of growth is not as good. People always think that organic is better, but in organic, sometimes you're missing some of those nutrients. Sometimes you're missing some of the things that you need. And so your conversion rate is not as high. In organic grain farming, you're not getting as much yield. In organic vegetable production, your vegetables are usually a bit smaller. And it's just because they're missing a few things. And people don't understand that. They don't understand that it's actually harder to grow organically. Is it ideological? Absolutely. Is it ideal to never spray a crop ever with anything? Absolutely. Is there a farmer out there that doesn't want to spray a crop? Yeah, they don't want to spray it. It costs money to spray. So, it's the ideologies and then it's the fear. And just one last point. I know I'm rambling on here, but one last point. I feel like my home raised chicken that you're going to get from me that I've grown up on. I've raised chickens like this many times before. I'm a healthy human being. I mean, I just had surgery a week ago and I did a cleaning job yesterday. Like I am a go-getter. I don't stop, and it's because I feed my body good food. I was raised like this. A little mind over matter, and that chicken that you're going to eat that maybe is not the most ideological is still going to be a way better choice for you, for your body than the box of Kraft dinner in the grocery store. So, I just think we need to let go of the ideologies and figure out what's that best. What's the better choice? Do you remember the toilet paper wars of 2020? Are you worried about being prepared in an emergency? Are you tired of being a slave to the corporations we purchase from? It's time to take control. Become ungovernable. Take your food system into your own hands. Hi, I'm Dawn, a coach dedicated to helping you live like grandma used to. Self-reliant, resourceful, and prepared. Whether it's raising chickens, growing a garden, canning your own food, or even milking a cow, I'll teach you how to thrive and survive in the space you have, big or small. We can even potentially make some money off your homestead. Visit Dawn's Dirt today to book your free jumpstart call. Together, as a team, we can get you self-reliant and ungovernable. We, the people, have the power to take back control. Remember, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Let's build a better future and a community, one skill set at a time.
Yeah, and that really, for me, like a big light bulb came out. It's like, maybe we're thinking about the labels and what's the best label to get, but are we thinking about the frequency of the food? chicken raised under your like loving roof and under your care from compared to some random farm that's been shipped in from the US that says organic on it. But like, which one do I trust? Like, my heart immediately says the chickens that Dawn raises are going to be frequency wise, vibration wise, full of love and care. And they are probably going to taste better than the warehouse organic chicken that I have no connection to and that I have no idea where it came from and how they were raised and all that stuff. Like, I do feel like frequencies and the idea and the mindset, like you said, has a lot to do with how healthy or good it's going to be for us.
Yeah, well, and just as you're speaking there too, like it's the connection, right? We back 100 years ago, you knew your chicken farmer and you knew your dairy farmer and you knew your pig farmer and you knew your vegetable farmer. Like it was a very close community minded system. And the whole homesteading movement is getting back to that, getting back to our roots, getting back to knowing your farmer, doing it yourself. I can help you if you need help doing it yourself, right? That's what I do is I want to teach people how to do this for themselves and then for their communities. And I know when I had my vegetables on my farm and I was, I was hugging the people that came and bought my vegetables. It was not about the vegetable itself. It was even bigger than that. It was about the relationship. And when you put the human experience and the human connection on something, it just is that much better and that much more than, the organic label that came out of Brazil from the grocery store. Like, I'm sorry, like one is better and one is best.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really, really good point and something super interesting to be aware of while as we get all caught up in the organic labels. I think our society loves labels. So that brings me actually exactly what you just said to my next question for you. So, how did we become so disconnected from our food? And the second part of that is who benefits from this disconnect in our food systems and in the stuff that gets to our plate?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the first question was what was the first question? Sorry.
How did we become so disconnected to our food?
Yes. Okay, so here's the problem with agriculture and farming right now. So in agriculture and farming, your margins are very slim. I'm going to take the greenhouse industry because I know that industry the best, but you take it, greenhouse industry, beef farming, grain farming, dairy farming, chicken farming, all of the farmings, all of the above, pork is especially bad, for this. So your margins per dozen cucumbers is very thin. So it costs you $6.90 to grow them. You're going to net 10 cents. And, if you have 100 dozen, that's not very much money. But if you have 1,000 dozen, that adds up a bit more and you can make a living. So the shift we've seen in agriculture is the bigger farms are no fault of their own having to get bigger and bigger and bigger because your razor margins are so thin that you just have to get bigger. And so what's happening is they're selling it from the farm to the packing plants or to the warehouses, to and then to the grocery stores. And everybody on the other side of that system makes money on it. So on a dozen cucumbers, back in the day, it was $7 a dozen. It's probably only like $8 or $9 a dozen now. And we're, 25 to 30 years later. So that shows you how sharp your pencil has to be in agriculture and in farming. And it'll go from the farm at $7 a dozen to the warehouse at $12 a dozen to the grocery store at $18 a dozen to the consumer, right? So everyone's putting their markup on it. And the ones that win the most are the middlemen, the ones that are buying and selling this food. And so the disconnect comes in is when we don't know our farmer. In the same time, everyone says, well, you're the farmer. Why does it cost you so much more? And the reason for that is I'm a small farmer. When you go to a farmer's market and you actually find a small farmer, not a reseller, but when you find a small producer, their margins are so thin still. Yes, they're able to make up some value on that because they're selling direct to customer, but their costs are higher than it would be for a big farmer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So our grocery system, I've been calling out our grocery system for about 10 years now in the name of health and safety or bureaucracy or climate change or whatever you want to call it. I see our big farms getting bigger, Are small farms getting pushed out? Although there is a big movement, and I can help with that, the homesteading movement. We, the people, can take the power back into our own hands and take our food system back into our own hands. But I've been calling it out for 10 years now. And if we are not careful as a human race, as society, we are eventually going to get a dictatorship in our food system. So in Canada, there is one main lender, Farm Credit Canada, who lends money on to farmers. And so these farmers are going to Farm Credit Canada. They're getting their loans. They're going into massive amounts of debts. When I was quit farming, I was $1 million in debt, and I was a very tiny fish in that big pond. I know farmers that have like millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of debt. And so when you're trying to service that debt and you're trying to do what's best for your farm, you're going to do what the big man says. And so if FCC or the government one day says you have to farm like this or you have to do that, the farmer has two choices: lose the farm or do what they say. And we saw that in the Netherlands. The Netherlands had it where the farmers were, having to go by this bureaucracy and do what the government and the regulations and the climate change, blah, 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 said. And the farmers were like, we can't afford to do this. But at the same time, if whoever's holding the loan, they can't afford not to. And so I think we're on a very slippery slope with our food system, in that we're going to end up with a dictatorship if we're not careful. That's why I think it's so important now more than ever. The toilet paper wars of 2020 showed us that if we can become independent and grow our own food, whatever that might be, even on a balcony, in your backyard, whatever you can do, get some independence and get some steps between yourself and that grocery store and that big food monster.
Yeah, so true. I can totally see how that there's like so many steps in between. And I mean, this phrase always tells you everything you need to know. It's like follow the money. That's it.
In
It's always
agriculture and farming, no different. But that's the problem, though, is they're demonizing farmers, and that just makes me angry and mad, because it's not the farmers. It's not the farmers' fault. The farmers are just doing what they have to do, and they are on the bottom rung of that ladder. They're doing what they're told to do. They're doing what they have to do to make their farm work.
Yeah. And I sympathize with that, because yeah, it's like, I know you as a farmer and I've met other farmers, and it's like they are not bad people. They are doing this from like the deepest part of their soul and their heart, and they are just trying to make it work. And I think it's such a devastation to our society that we're all of a sudden like, oh, these farmers, they're spraying Roundup, or they're hiking up their costs and stuff like that, where it's like, wait. There's so many people in between that we've lost complete sense. And so we just want to like pick a farmer and be like, they're the easiest to blame.
Because farmers are out farming. They're not the ones out, picketing on the fence line. They're out farming. They've got the farm, their farm is on the line. They don't have the time. Although I've seen some of the protests that farmers do when you really make a farmer mad, like, watch out. Like, I was just actually had a conversation with I had a farmer here for supper the other night, and we were talking about grain prices and tariffs and all these things. And he's just a conventional grain farmer. He likes his canola and he likes his Roundup and whatever. I mean, I don't get into it too much. He does what he does. I think there is a place for less canola. And I told him, I said, I don't eat canola oil. I don't love that stuff. Biodiesel, that's a different story. Cleaning up a field with a canola crop, that's a different story. But I don't eat canola oil. Anyways, we were chatting about all this, and he said in Canada right now, we've got all this talk about tariffs and Trump and all these things. And he said it depends on those Quebec farmers. Those Quebec dairy farmers are, he said they're crazy. And so if you're a Quebec dairy farmer, I'm sorry if you're hearing this, but maybe you're crazy. I don't know. But he said those Quebec farmers will go to Ottawa, take their slurry tanks of manure and shit and throw it right in Ottawa's face. And so, like, that's the thing. Don't fuck with a farmer, because you're going to get shit on your face. Like, you can only be pushed so far. And then your farm, your livelihood, and who you are as a person depends on it. I mean, when I sold my farm, and I made the business decision to sell my farm, I got out while I still had a few pennies in my pocket. Some farmers don't even do that. They'll grind till it's taken from them. And the first thing I did was I saw a hat, a ball cap, and it said, "It's in my blood." And it's so truthful. When you're a farmer, it's your whole identity. It's who you are. It's the whole reason why I'm getting back into doing things on my own. I was fired from 2 jobs this past summer. I don't know how to work for others. I know how to raise food, grow food, and sell food to the community, to my neighbors, to my friends, and to my people. That's what I know how to do. That's in my blood.
Yeah, so true. And I can feel it and see it all the time when you talk, and every episode your passion for it comes through, and I think that reigns true for many farmers, all farmers that are really connected to what they do and the reasons they got into it in the first place, right?
Yeah.
All right, so Don, the idea of self-sufficiency, I think you're the perfect person to ask for this because there's this idea around self-sufficiency and breaking away from the system. And I think that that's great. And there's part of me that thinks, okay, yes, let's do as many things as we can. But is self-sufficiency for the average person actually possible? Or is it kind of just a lie that's like on the internet from influencers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you this much. There are a lot of people that buy an acreage and they think that they can do it and they can't. They don't have the work ethic, they don't have the stomach for it. I got 200 chicks in my backyard. I've pulled out 5 dead ones. And one of them actually, sorry, I'll fix that. I pulled out 4 dead ones and I euthanized the 5th one. And you know what? It's not easy. It's not fun to euthanize an animal. It's not fun to take a life and so a lot of people think that, again, it's around the ideologies in this homesteading thing. Like, you think it's going to be a bed of roses, but it's not. I worked in a farm store last year and a woman came in, lovely woman, and she was crying because her lamb died. And I just said to her, I hugged her in the middle of the store, and I said, did you do the best you can? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, then that's all you can do. And so that's why hiring a coach is so important, because then you've got someone like me who can come alongside you and say, this is the best decision. This is the decision you need to make. And homesteading has gotten very cutesy and very, yeah, ideological in some ways. You see all these pictures of the silky hens and the pretty chickens and the heritage breeds. And, those breeds are great. They're good, but they're not the best breeds for food production. Those Lohman Browns or those brown hens or the white hens, those are the ones that you want for food production, right? And so, yeah, there's ideologies around it. Having said that, I do think that we, the people, can do whatever we can in the spaces that we have. So that we've got lots of people in towns, lots of people in cities, and it comes down to just something as simple as growing a few things in your backyard or in your front window or things like that. Changing out your house plants for food plants, like something that simple can make you self-reliant. And then if you're in a town or in a city, and the best thing you can do for yourself is to get to know your farmers and actually know them, who grew them, where did it come from, when was it picked, how was it grown, what did you feed them, how many do you have, how many acres of garden do you have. Those are questions that you need to ask. Can I come out to your farm and have a look? Get to know your farmer, and that's the best way to connect with someone. So it's stop with the ideologies and just get into connecting yourself to your food. And I don't know, is that a good answer?
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is just, I think there's a grandiose idea of self-sufficiency and buying the acreage and going out into the middle of nowhere and starting from scratch and creating this whole life that on Instagram and TikTok looks so romantic. And I know this from myself because this has been, it's been on a vision board of mine at least for a couple years in a row. And it feels like now I'm sort of, even through your podcast on, like I'm starting to see and realize the realities of that is you are up at the crack of the dawn. There's no holidays. To be truly self-sufficient is a full-time job. And I think the idea of romanticizing this homestead, and there's milk and there's beautiful baked bread and there's chickens outside and you're growing some tomatoes. It's like, that's a very ideological idea. And it is just that, it's an idea. And then you don't see them picking up the manure and seeing animals that do pass on the farm, that you got to do what you got to do, that you don't see the early mornings and the late nights and the weekends, and there's no holidays. There's probably, like, all of these things, we don't see the other side of that. And so that Instagram highlight reel is kind of a little trick. And I think what I'm hearing you also say is that you don't have to go whole hog on it. Like, you could just do one or two things to start the process of becoming more self-sufficient and start to just dabble with it. And each step takes you your power back and a little bit farther away from this big conglomerate system of food and being reliant on these external systems and that are so disconnected from who we are as human beings and communities.
Absolutely. So farming, because again, if you're homesteading, it's farming. It's farming on a very small scale, but it's farming. And farming takes grit. Farming takes a set of balls. Farming takes, so much give. And yes, the tomato at the end of the day, or the jar, the jar of raw milk, or whatever it is that you got, the chicken that you raised, and like, that's the reward. So people are showing the reward, but they're not showing the grit and the hard work and the effort and the yucky and the bad days and the tears and all the things behind it. Now, I'm not saying that those things aren't rewarding. I went from working, 60, 70, 80 hours a week to not having my farm, to working, just 30 to 40 hours a week at a job, job. And I'll tell you what, I miss it. Like, I miss the grind, I miss the grit, I miss the work, I miss, which is why I'm headed right back into it, because that's what I want, that's what I know. But if you're not prepared to put in that ugly for the pretty tomato or the pretty set of eggs at the end, like, yeah, it's just, people need to know the other side of it as well. And Instagram pretty doesn't show the other side of it all the time. And so that's why I'm here. I'm the homestead coach that is going to tell you, no, it's this way and it's this way and it's this way. I've had clients tell me, Dawn, you're so direct. I actually appreciate that you're direct, but I call a spade a spade. I'm Dutch background, Dutch blood. So if that explains anything about a few things to my listeners, yeah, I just call a spade a spade. I call it out, and it's just very direct. This is the way it is. Having said that, you're correct. Everyone can do something. I had a consultant who always said to me, less is more, less is more. And so do the few things that you can in your own space, in your own home. Maybe even make a loaf of sourdough. Start with sourdough. Everyone starts with sourdough, and then they move to chickens, and then they move to all the rest, right? But start with sourdough, or start with a garden, or start with a few plants, and then work your way up, build your way up into more. Or bite off more than you can chew, hire a coach, and you get more, right? Like, there's ways to do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, just to see the perspective of, gosh, it is a lot of work, but I can see how it's like, I've always heard sourdough is the gateway. You start doing that. And I think the addictive part of it is that all of a sudden you start having this competence in yourself, and you start recognizing that you're like, oh, well, I have been buying my bread from the grocery store, but wow, it's actually like, when I first made my first loaf of bread, I was like, oh my God, this is so easy. I couldn't believe how easy it was. And here I am trying to buy like artisanal gluten-free bread. And I'm like, the bread with the regular unbleached flour in my kitchen with 4 ingredients. Wow, that is easy. And it's so tasty. And everyone in my family enjoyed it. And like, not only did I cut out a trip to the grocery store or maybe even a bakery, but I got kind of like excited about doing it myself. And I can see why that would all of a sudden, like, I have a garden in the backyard too. And it just, every little baby step matters. And I think it's also about stacking the evidence that you can become a little bit more self-sufficient over time. It's not going to happen overnight unless you do bite off more than you can chew. But the little steps, you're all of a sudden like, you start believing in yourself again.
Well, and that's what we need. It's empowering, right? It's empowering. One of my clients last year, her daughter, she pulled a carrot out of the ground and she was so proud to show this carrot to someone because that little girl, 5 or 6 years old, I don't forget how old she is. That little girl planted the seed, weed the carrot patch, watered it, cared for it, loved on it, and pulled that carrot out like it was, the number one prize at the county fair, right? It's just, and how empowering for that child. Well, again, as human beings, if we can do that in our spaces, like it's just, you're right. It's so empowering to know that I baked this loaf of bread, and the pride that you would find on it, that you don't need a number one ribbon. Your number one ribbon is the loaf of bread that you get to enjoy and that you get to share with your community and your friends and your neighbors. And that's the thing. Like that's what I feel like the bigger picture, the powers, I don't want to get too tinfoil hatty, but when we start giving our power away to grocery stores, when we start giving our power away to, these corporations, it takes power away from us, and we're reliant on the hand that feeds us. And he who controls the food controls the people. And so when you can do anything for yourself to become self-reliant in the space you have, even if it's an apartment building, you can build a loaf of sourdough, right? And so anything you can do to make yourself self-reliant, that's empowering, and that's where the future needs to go.
Great. I
Yeah.
I absolutely love that, and I think it's so true. And I love the word empowerment. Like that is the feeling. It's pride, it's empowerment to like all of a sudden be like, I am powerful. I can create something. I feel like it's almost like a creative outlet in a way that we don't really think about, that like you're able to like, and I know how good it feels to like put my hands in the soil and like start being outside and doing all those things. Like it's a feeling that I can't really describe, but anybody else who does it knows it.
Oh, it's just it's full body. It's full
Yeah.
body experience, right? When I'm plant my garden this year, you got to know that I'm going to be in there with bare feet, right? Touching the earth, touching the soil. Yeah, is it going to make my manicure on my toes ugly? I don't care, like even my nails, like I get my nails done and sometimes I get a little fussy and I don't want to get my nails dirty, but when I'm right into it and when I plant that garden, you got to know there's going to be dirt under my nails and my manicure is going to look black underneath and it's going to look ugly, but I don't care. Like that, there's something with the soil, with the earth. We've been created to touch the soil, touch the earth, and raise our food. And so, yeah, I was going to touch on too. One of my biggest fears moving off of my farm, and I thought I potentially had to move to town. One of my biggest fears actually was, what am I going to feed my family? What am I going to do? And thankfully I landed out in the country again, but that was my biggest fear, is how will I feed my family if the grocery store shut down? It was a literal fear of mine because I don't trust that system. I've seen the system, I've been in the system, I don't trust that system. So self-sufficiency for me is a life or death thing. Like the more self-sufficient I can become for my kids, I know that I can feed them. So that's so important to me.
Yeah. And it's so cool that you have that power, right? And that ability to be like, if things don't go the way I see them, or with my attachments to the system and stuff like that, like I got me, I got my family, and I probably have the people around me as well.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
Well, and
feeling.
that's where homesteading comes back to community. That's where we need to get back to these small community things, because if the grocery system shut down and your farmer, or you're growing tomatoes and they're growing basil, you're going to work together to get yourself some food, right? So that's what we need to get back to. If you think about, like, if we were to have full on anarchy, people are going to barter and trade. And I mean, look at the TV show The Walking Dead. What did they do? They bartered and they trade and they built communities and all these things around the zombies. I'm not saying we're going to get there, but the point is, if we can still keep these skill sets that grandma and grandpa had, people are not connected to the farm like they used to be. And so if we can still keep these skill sets like grandma and grandpa had, we're going to be better off in the Walking Dead, because we're going to know how to raise our food and build a compound, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just, I think it's important that we don't lose this in society, that we're not just a handout, that we can actually have our hands and hand ourselves up.
Yes. And it's important for the next generations, right? There are so many generations that have lost these skills and these abilities. And it's so interesting now that I'm diving more into this for myself. And then there's all of a sudden these things that I'm like, I can't believe I don't know this already. Like, why wasn't I taught this in school? Why is it that I do not know how does as a 34-year-old woman, I taught myself how to make a loaf of bread. Like, I did it with my grandma and she had a bread maker. It's not quite the same, but like, how is it that I'm just learning this now? Like, this is kind of insane. And so I think it's really important. You talked about the child with the carrot, and like that understanding for children, baking that into their skill set of life is so, so crucial.
And it's the part that we're missing, you know. Kids go to school now, and I mean, there's a time and a place for the school system. I had I gone had my kids been little now, I probably would have tried to take on one more thing and homeschooled them. But you know, there is a time and a place for reading and arithmetic, and you know, some of the social things. There is a time and a place for the school system, but at the same time, I agree we need to get our school systems to get back into using our hands, using our bodies, using our brains. You know, like yeah. I liken it to the job I just had. I just had this thought. I got my first job in 20 years at a farm store, fairly significant big farm store. And I honestly, this is what I felt like when I walked into work at the beginning of the day. Welcome to the, and I won't say the farm name, welcome to the store. I am here to do as I'm told, do what they say, do, you know, and leave my brain at the door. That's how I felt, is leave your brain at the door and do your job. And I think a lot of jobs and sometimes the school systems and things like that is leave your brain at the door, leave your questions at the door, don't ruffle the feathers, just fit in the box and do as you're told. And we need, that's not how we're wired. I'm sorry. I'm not wired like that, which is why I got fired. You know, like, let's question, let's come to solutions, let's problem solve. That's what farming is. I mean, when I had my farm, I was problem solving and problem solving. That's what I did all day long. And not only for myself, you know, I was on the farm and doing different things, but my staff, they would call me, Dawn, what do I do about this? Dawn, what do I do? This is wrong, that's wrong. And I was problem solving all day long. My problem solving skills are impeccable. You bring me a problem and I can give you 15 practical solutions. You know, that's what I learned from being on the farm, is how to solve the problems, how to pull that really sick chick out of my flock and do what needed to be done because I was solving a problem.
Yeah, and you're solving problems for a greater good as well. It's not just minute by minute. It's like, okay, well, you're always having to keep the micro in mind, but also thinking about in the background, what's the macro of this problem? Like, what is the bigger issue here? And how can I make sure that the overall well-being of my food, of my crop, of the community is also in the forefront so that I can make these decisions, and it can be easy because you can get so sucked into the micro decisions of your life without thinking about the macro. And I think that's a probably a big skill set of critical thinking and awareness in homesteading that would be really handy to have.
For sure, absolutely. I mean, what do we do? What do you do when your bank card doesn't work? Like, that's where it goes. Like, if the bank card doesn't work someday and there's not a money system and there's not a grocery store, and we've got this massive food system with big massive farmers and big groceries and big everything, like, when that system breaks down and fails, what are you going to eat? That's a pretty significant, it's just such a, well, it's really a small issue in many ways because, you know, all we need is food, shelter, clothing, water. Like, we're pretty basic. But again, if we're relying on a huge monster to provide us those needs, there's a problem. And when that monster is no longer there, like, yeah, what are you going to put in your mouth? What are you going to put in your tummy? And again, you asked me earlier about organics. Well, when that monster fails, it's not even about organics anymore. It's about food. So, you know, let's just make better decisions, the best decisions for our family. Let's try organics. I'm not condoning organics at all. Like, I grew without pesticide unless certified organic product is used. But, you know, I used fertilizer in my hydroponic greenhouse. It just, the nutrients were there. My food was healthy. My food was nutrient dense. I just gave them different nutrients than an organic farmer would. That's all.
Right. That makes perfect sense. So, Don, I want to ask a little bit of a selfish question here. So, and I think your listeners would appreciate this as well. So, I live in a big ass city. I live in Toronto. It is noisy. It is concrete jungle, and I have always had this romanticized idea of homesteading. Now that's changed through just a lot of research and understanding a little bit more about it. But let's say I did want to, or one of your listeners wanted to get out of a city life. They wanted to start somewhere, but they know that taking on a massive acreage is probably not the best foot forward and not the best first step. What would you say is like the first baby step that you could do? Let's say like I'm willing to move out of the city. Should I go get a big farm or should I go get something small? Like how much space do I need to like make this homestead life come to fruition? What do I need to start with?
Oh, this is a great question because this is something, these are the bridges that I myself, as I moved off my 42-acre farm into potentially moving into town, and then I landed outside of town. And I've been looking at homesteads myself, like other acreages and things. It depends on what your goals, hopes, and dreams are. But if you want to just bite off enough for your family, a couple of acres, sometimes acreages only allow you to have so many animals, but you could have some chickens. You might even be able to get away with a goat or something like that. When it comes to cattle are big. And so you want more space for them, for the cattle. But even something as simple as moving, to the suburbs, moving to a small town. And when I was first looking, I was looking at town and I was looking at homes in town. And the first thing I looked at was what was the backyard like? How big was the backyard? How many chickens can I get away with in that backyard? Yes, there's bureaucracy in town, but again, a set of meat birds, a few meat birds, 10 meat birds, 20 meat birds. It's an 8-week turnaround. You can do a lot in a very, very small space, even in town. Yes, that's maybe not fully legal, but you can do a lot. And even just a garden. I've got a client I just signed on now, and she's in a duplex in the city of Calgary. And she has these huge planter boxes and a huge garden at the top of her property, like her backyard. And she's going to grow so much food just in that space. And so just look for the space and then call me. And sorry, the sales girl in me, like the wanting to help. It's really what it is wanting to help. I want to help so many people achieve their goals. That's what it is. So yeah, like you can do so much with just a small space. I had, who was I talking to the other day? I was talking to someone, and she was telling me that her grandmother had a lot in town, one of those older school lots that were really big. And she fed not only her family, but her kids and her grandkids, and she shared and things like that. You can grow so much. The misconception is that you have to be out of town on an acreage. You don't. You can be in town, in a city, on a lot, and use the space you have.
That's great advice. Although I do find there's something I'm looking for now. Like I can tell in my brain, I'm like, that sounds great, but I grew up in the suburbs, so I kind of get it. We always had big backyards. My mom had beautiful gardens and stuff. But there is something about the peace and quiet of living outside of town. There's less traffic, there's more wildlife, there's birds, there's all these kind of things. And it definitely, I'm at the point in my life where like the construction in Toronto, it's really getting to me. So maybe
Absolutely.
eventually, maybe eventually that's in my plan. So that's really great advice, Don, that you can start with something small and go from there. And I think it's really valid also that like I'm sure there are rules in townships around like can having chickens and having animals and stuff like that. And I think there's also the degree of risk involved of taking like, okay, what can I do here? What feels right for me? And is there something that I can do that's kind of in between that allows me to stay within my rights as a human being to feed my family and to make sure that I am going towards the direction of self-sufficiency and I'm not like being a menace to my neighbors?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Like because your friends and neighbors, your neighbors are your community, right? So that's the thing is you got to be able to work together. But that's where I envision this whole homesteading movement going is that you're not just the only one doing it, that the neighbor on the left and the neighbor on the right are doing all the same things. And the neighbor on the left can grow zucchini really well. And the neighbor on the right can grow, have eggs really well. And so you just barter and trade among yourself. And then you've got 3 families within a block that, you know, can feed each other, right? It's a system. And I'm not saying I don't think that you should have goats in town. I don't think you should have sheep in town. I don't think you should have cows in town. Like, I think that there's a time and a place for everything. But, you know, do the things that you can do. Meat rabbits, quail. There's lots and lots and lots of options, even in towns, to become self-sufficient. You do not, as society, we do not, it's a lie. We do not have to rely on this monster of a system that we have going on. The grocery store shut down tomorrow. You can feed yourself. And I want to empower people to know that they can do that.
I love that, Dawn. I love everything. You're speaking to the right crowd right now for me.
I love it.
And it warms my heart just to know that like you have such confidence in human beings that, you know, a lot of people have been so disconnected for so long and they've just lost sight of their own capabilities. And it's like, no, every human being can do this. Everyone has the skill set, and whether it takes a little bit of coaching or someone to sort of bring you along on this adventure, like there's so many resources out there. Like, how lucky are we that we live in a world of online coaches and YouTube and online courses and these things that there are so abundantly available that make things like this so possible. It's really an enlightening time. And as much as the internet, and we talk bad about influencers and the romanticizing of homesteading on Instagram, like it is still a beautiful time to be alive and to take on all this information. Like we used to have to just walk to the library and that was your resource. And now we can do so
Yeah.
much.
Well, and it's getting back to our roots, getting back to basics, just realizing that we've been created as these beings, you know, to work hard and play hard and care for one another. And we just need to find our roots back. I think we've lost our way as a society, as a humankind right now. And so we just need to get back to some of those, you know, fundamental roots of, you know, hunter-gatherer, farming, you know, back in the day, back 200 years ago, everyone was a farmer in some capacity. And now we've got 1% of people feeding 99% of people. That's a scary statistic. And so we just need to find our roots back and find out, get back to our, you know, our roots and who we are as people. And yeah.
That leads me right to my next question. Amazing, Dawn. So, what's a generational pattern around food or farming that you are intentionally trying to break?
Home cooking,
Mm.
home cooking and seasonal eating. So when I was at the farmer's market, people would come to my booth in August or September and ask for asparagus. And I said, sorry, out of luck. Asparagus season was in May and June. Like, this is here in Alberta. And so we need to get back to our seasonal eating. We need to get back to, we don't expect asparagus year round. We don't expect corn outside of the months of August, September. And so when I had my farm and when, you know, I had my customers, I said, now is the time. It is corn season. Eat your fill. Eat so much corn right now that you're sick of corn and you don't even want to look at another cob of corn again until next August when it looks good again, right? So that's the thing. We need to get back to that seasonal eating. We need to get back to not having the expectation that everything is going to be on the grocery store shelves. You don't need strawberries year round. You don't need asparagus year round. You need to eat what's in season. And our bodies even crave that. In the wintertime, our bodies here in Canada, North America, we want more of the potatoes, carrots, onions, beets, squash, soups, stews. We want more of those foods in the wintertime. And in the summertime, we want more of the salads and the, you know, the peas, the fresh peas and the fresh carrots, you know, like we want more fresh in the summer because we're out doing things, and we want more of the, you know, wholesome, hearty foods in the wintertime. So I think we need to get back to that. We need to lower our expectations when it comes to food. In realizing we don't have to have the avocado. We don't have to have the, you know, whatever it might be, pick something, right? We don't have to have it on demand. If we eat seasonally and eat from the farmer and eat for our region, our zone, you know, the avocado becomes a treat.
That's a really beautiful thing. I'm just nodding my head over and over because it makes so much sense to me that, yeah, we are in the wintertime. Oh, all I want is soups and stews and warm, delicious things that probably come from the frozen stuff that I've saved and I have in my freezer, and I'm warming that all up and I'm creating this concoction, and oh my goodness, doesn't it feel so good? And it's like I don't necessarily want to bite into an apple in January.
No.
And just like I'm cold, I don't need that. But oh my goodness, an apple after a beautiful like fall day and you've been harvesting or whatever, like that feeling, like I can feel it in my teeth right now. And it's something to look forward to, right? Like we get this expectation that like you have apples all year round. And in Ontario, we have a beautiful apple season and a pear season and all these things. And it's kind of just that's why it feels so natural to me, and that is why you probably crave what you crave, because we are one, we are part of nature, like we were meant to be, in these seasons, and you really forget that, yeah, you're not supposed to be eating blueberries all year
No.
round.
I'm just going to wrap it up here and to kind of bring it full circle to what we were talking about in the beginning. Like we just need to get out of our heads. You were asking me about organics. We need to get out of our heads and just get back to basics. Just get back to like that wholesome eating, lowering our expectations of what we think food should be and how things should go. Even in the homesteading world, you have this high set of expectations, and when they're not met because the lamb died, it's so get out of our heads, take it down a notch. Let's just bring it back to the basics and realize, it's just raising food, eating good food, nourishing your body, skipping out on the craft dinner and the McDonald's, and, let's just bring it back down to a out of your head and normal human flesh and bone food system. I don't know how to say that, but like let's just simplify it again. We need to make our food system simple again. That's what it boils down to. So any last thoughts, any last questions? And I would love for people to know who you are. And so if you want to get into podcasting, Carley's your girl. And so reach out to her, because again, I could never do this without her. So any last thoughts on anything here, Carley?
No, you've answered so many beautiful questions. Thank you so much, Dawn. Everything is it's so from your heart, and I absolutely love it. I hope everyone walked away with some little golden nuggets of how to simplify and get out of your head and stop focusing on the labels and focus more on love and community and that beautiful food that we're all growing. So yeah, I am more than happy to help people's podcasts come to life. If you want to reach out, it's Carley Butler Media, and I have a website. I'll put that all in the show notes because I'll be putting this episode together. So thank you so much, Dawn. I had so much fun here today.
Yes. I want to have you back. Like I could talk, I feel like I know we have to cut it off, but I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this. This is so much fun. I really appreciate your time today and being on the show. So
thanks, Dawn. Love it.
Yeah.